Welcome to the Point. Almost every week when you turn on the program, you expect to see an elected official sitting across from me or on Zoom or wherever we are, and we always talk about a number of subjects, but one of them that we always talk about, economic development and jobs. So on this show, we are going to talk exclusively about that with the new president of The Right Place, Randy Thelen. Mr. Thelen, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Normally we do a lot of politics here, but politics always involves those things I just talked about.
Sure.
Economic development and jobs. In your new position since March, is it?
Yeah, March 1st.
So you take over this well-respected, well-oiled, if you will, economic development machine, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I'm interested in you and finding out about where you began, where you've been in the economic development world, and how you ended up back here.
Yeah, no, thanks, Rick, and thanks for having me here today. And you touched on it. It really comes down to jobs and how a job can impact a family, impact an individual, help them really lead a successful, full, and high quality of life lifestyle. And that can really be impacted by economic development. The ability to serve and kind of bridge the public sector and the private sector is really what economic development is all about. I'm a Michigan-born kid. I grew up just about an hour east of Grand Rapids and got my start in economic development very early. Made my way through Michigan, northern Michigan for a while, southeast Michigan for a stretch, but really cut my teeth when I was over in the Holland and Zeeland area leading their economic development effort for 10 years and really gained a great appreciation for the West Michigan culture, the West Michigan business culture, and how unique it is and special it is, really. My family had a bit of an adventurous streak, and we ventured further west. We spent 5 years in Omaha leading an economic development organization there, very similar to The Right Place, before the last 3 years spending that in the city of Denver, which is, as you know, one of the biggest, fastest growing markets in the country.
It's interesting. We were talking beforehand. I lived in Omaha, and it's been a number of years ago.
Sure.
But we were talking about there are some similarities there and big differences in Denver. So that gives you kind of broad cross-section of experiences as you come back to what is a very rapidly growing and thriving, certainly was, in the past number of years here in West Michigan. And I should point out, it's not just Grand Rapids, it's all of West
regional,
Michigan.
Absolutely. And I have a deep passion for Michigan. I have an especially deep passion for West Michigan. I think there is something special here. We want to make it a dynamic, thriving economy that provides opportunities for everybody so that, frankly, my kids, your kids, our grandkids can ultimately enjoy a great quality of life here. But having gone outside of the market and worked in Omaha, worked in Denver, I come back now, I think with a different lens, a different set of experiences. I appreciate what we have in West Michigan even more than I did before we left, but I also bring some experiences that I think can help us get to another level.
When you say economic development, for some people, it conjures up a particular image or a notion of what that is. For some people, it's just a throwaway phrase that they maybe don't think about too much. But it's real, and it's something that can be approached on a number of levels. From The Right Place, you talk about, people and places and all of the things that are important to come together. How would you describe The Right Place and what its mission is to somebody who hasn't given a lot of thought to economic development?
Yeah, fundamentally, we wake up every day trying to make this region that much stronger, that much better economically. In doing so, then, we provide more job opportunities, more startup opportunities for people to live their fullest and highest potential. We want people to enjoy the best quality of life they possibly can right here in West Michigan, and some of that comes by way of a job and the income they can earn in that endeavor. So to do that, Rick, we've reframed our strategy around people, place, and prosperity. So people, it starts there. Fundamentally, everything we do is trying to help people, again, achieve their highest potential. And so are we training people properly? Are we attracting the talent that can help take us to another level? We know we have challenges on diverse talent not enjoying the same opportunities. We have about double the unemployment rate, much lower income levels, unfortunately. So we need to lean in there and help our employers do that around that people sort of area. The second piece then is place, and how do we build out places that really build on the quality of life so our community becomes magnetic. It's magnetic so our young people want to stay here. It's magnetic so new talented people want to move to our market. And we've done a lot of good work in this space over the years. We need to keep doing more. We can't rest. The best markets in the country keep getting better every day. We need to lean in and do the same. And if we do people right, and if we do place right, we know that prosperity is going to be a much simpler proposition. That the ability to develop new companies, the ability to attract new companies, the ability to help expand existing companies gets a lot simpler if we have the talent piece right, if we have the quality of life right. more companies are going to want to be here, which means more opportunities for people to earn an even better living.
Talk to me about how you perform in a very competitive market. Now, in a minute, I want to talk about some of the state influence on
Sure.
that, obviously with the MEDC and the partnership there. But generically, without that, what is the environment like when someone is looking to put a business, whatever the size
Yeah.
business is, and they're looking in Indiana, and they're looking in North Carolina, maybe they're looking in Tennessee or Texas, but they're also looking in Michigan.
Yeah.
How tough is it? I guess it's case by case, but I mean, you are in competition with those states.
We are, and I love to compete. My team loves to compete each and every day, and we have a great product in which to sell. I mean, what I've come to appreciate coming back to the state is Michigan is an asset-rich community. We're an asset-rich region, an asset-rich state, meaning you can't find the community college infrastructure, the university infrastructure that we enjoy here. Once you get west of the Mississippi, all the way until you get to California, it's pretty light. We have an incredible advantage in that regard. So we can develop people unlike any other part of the country. That's a real competitive asset for us, and we sell that each and every day. It starts, though, with our existing customers. Just like a business has to retain their existing customers, the same is true of our economic development efforts. We have to make sure our existing companies find this West Michigan business culture to their advantage and want to continue to grow. We can't expect new companies to come here. Our existing companies are fleeing. And thankfully, we just did the survey work over the past year, Rick. We went with over 400 companies, asking them a variety of questions, one of which is, do you like the business climate here in West Michigan? And 94% give favorable approval rating to our business climate here in West Michigan, which means this is a great fertile soil for them to grow their business. And if we want to compete, as I did I flew in late last night from California, we're meeting with a company that we would like to see grow here. For us to be able to sit across the table like this and say, look, come to a welcoming community, particularly competing against California, where it's not necessarily a business-friendly state, we can show the data, we can show the compelling advantage as to why they should be here. So first, keep our existing clients, our existing customers happy and growing. That allows us to make the case for others to come join.
You talked about a business-friendly environment, and here in Michigan for years, the MEDC has been trying to portray that and trying to influence that a little bit. And while I should point out, in full transparency, the MEDC has its detractors sometimes in the House and Senate.
Sure.
How important is that kind of a state function to work in concert with a place like the Right Place?
Yeah, absolutely. We are very close partners with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Their new CEO, Quentin Messer, I consider him a friend of mine now. He's really hit the ground running since coming on board this past summer. You know, you can't, it's hard to sell a region if we're tagged as a bad business state. Thankfully, the state has made good ground on that over the last several years. In fact, I saw a ranking where we're 14th now in terms of business climate as a state. The tax climate's gotten improved. We've addressed personal property tax. We've addressed corporate income tax. And so we're far better positioned than when I left about 10 years ago.
You talked about that economic climate. 94% of those people you talked about were positive about that. Yet, daily we hear headlines about inflationary pressure. We know that there have been real supply chain problems,
Sure.
and that those have impacted, I said on last week's show, those have impacted anybody who buys anything.
Of course.
I mean, it has been that. Still, you found, and maybe a little ahead of that, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
some of these things have developed after that, but do you still think that holds true despite the fact that nationally we're seeing pressure on the economy?
Well, we were asking, again, a very localized question. What do they think of the West Michigan business climate? And the factors that we control, they're extremely favorable towards, right? So we have a very strong pipeline of talent. We have a very strong training and education system. Our infrastructure here is strong. Our public sector remains very welcoming and receptive to business. So across the board, the West Michigan business climate remains very strong. But you're right, the headwinds heading into next year are equally strong, right? Inflation is a curse on virtually everything. And so next year, companies are really starting to scratch their head as to how do they plan. As we just saw the other day, inflation rates at 6.8%. That's going to be a difficult challenge for them to overcome. Pricing pressure, wage pressure, all of that coming to a head is going to make for an interesting 2022.
We're going to talk about a recent economic forecast that you released, and I found it very interesting because I think there were some positive things in there, but there are also what you just called headwinds, and there's one other big one in there, and I want to talk about talent. Because in addition to a number of other things, talent is going to be an issue. Now, maybe the good news is, I think it's an issue everywhere,
That's
but we'll
right.
get you to answer that question. And we'll be back with more To The Point coming up in just a moment. Welcome back to The Point. Our guest this morning is Randy Thelen. He is the president and CEO of The Right Place, not an elected official, but I've talked to every elected official that's ever been at this desk or on this show about something that deals with economic development. You recently, as a group, released an economic forecast, and I was sitting and listening to this and thinking, over the number of years that I have watched the boom and bust cycle that we have had in Michigan's economy, largely based on the auto industry, but a number of other factors, that even after this remarkable time, not only is the state government, and I take all the federal money out of that for a minute, state government up $3 billion, more than that, than they projected, plus all of the federal money, plus you look at what's going on with the economy. I think you said nobody has ever seen an economy like this. I don't know about anybody else, but I certainly have never seen one with all of the different pressures and upheaval and uncertainty. How odd is it that we are where we are?
Yeah, I'm an economist at heart, Rick. I've studied economics my whole life, and never did I imagine we would have conversations around trillions of dollars so often and so fluidly. Like it's a big number. It's as we know now, we're 10 plus trillions of dollars of stimulus coming through the federal government. We've never been here before. We've never seen anything like this before. And so what's interesting out of this sort of pandemic-driven recession is, unlike most recessions where maybe the Midwest and Michigan in particular, as you said, busts a little bit more than most, it's universal. It's almost homogenous around the globe. And so it gives us a unique opportunity as a state and as a region to come out of this downturn much more quickly, much more robustly, and really sort of separate ourselves from the pack. Every state, every community now has stimulus dollars coming through to make big decisions about. And if we make the right decisions and invest properly, we can catapult out of this recession unlike any in the past. And I can't get my head around the trillions of dollars either. It's pretty extraordinary, but at the end of the day, these things are coming through. And so now it's our turn to make those choices. And if we make wise ones, it'll set us up for the next 50 years.
Put a finer point on that, because we are not alone. Every state in the union is going to have a lot of money. So it doesn't make any difference so much that we have the money, but it makes a difference what we do with the money, because those choices will be different from state to state. So as you have conversations with elected officials, as you have conversations with your clients, as you call them, the people who are already here, are there any obvious things that you would like to see done?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, The Right Place, we're not a political organization, to your point, so we don't take hard positions on these things. But certainly when you think about places to invest, people and talent is paramount. We know we're going through a transformation in a number of our industries, automotive in particular, and so we need to find ways to upskill our workforce so that they can step into these new jobs and frankly earn higher wages in doing so. So talent investment is paramount. We also see opportunities to invest in the core of our communities across the region and build on that quality of life, that placemaking element that we discussed earlier. You know, I went back in history and looked at the Work Progress Administration back in the New Deal, and we built Ludington State Park at that time. 100 years later, and we're still enjoying one of the great parks in the country, if not the world. We need to be thinking along those lines. What are the assets we could build, whether it's the riverfront in downtown Grand Rapids, whether it's another state park along the lake? We need to build on that quality of life and really make this an attractive place for people that they want to live and enjoy the great, beautiful state that we offer.
When you talk about people, I haven't talked to a business person or an owner of a business in the past 8 months, 10 months, since we've had the vaccine, and there was kind of this expectation that once people start getting vaccinated, they'll go back to work and things will be more normal. And that hasn't happened in a lot of sectors. Now, part of it may be because people have found other jobs. Part of it may be because some people have decided not to participate for whatever reason. But in addition to upscaling talent, which I do want to talk about more, you've got to find more warm bodies to get in these jobs, right?
You know, we do. It's interesting. This is another place where it's not normal and we've never been here before. We have gone through the steepest economic recession this country's ever seen, this region's ever seen, and today We have 8,000 more unemployed people than we had in February of 2020. In the grand scheme of a region like ours, it's over 1 million people. 8,000 people, it's tough individually, but given everything we've gone through, that's a number we can say, all right, we've made it through this. But what's not told with that unemployment number is there's an additional 33,000 people who have left the workforce, whether they've taken early retirement, whether it's a daycare challenge or it's a public health concern. Whatever the reason, we know there's 33,000 people that were working pre-pandemic who have not come back. Our employers, we have to find ways to invite them back to work. It's still not a normal environment. I mean, every day I've got kids in school. Virtually every day I get an email that says the bus isn't running, the school or this classroom's not closed. So it's hard for people that have, depend on getting their kids through that school system. It's hard for them to have a consistent work life. But we've got to sort that out. And again, the regions who do this and get that dialed in quicker, get people back to work, are going to be the strongest performers coming out of this recession.
You work on the business side, but you have to be very in tune with the labor force side.
Absolutely.
As you explore what people who are currently not working or people who are working say they want, how much of it is about wages, which have gone up
Substantially.
pretty dramatically?
That's right.
And how much is it about quality of life, the things you just talked about, having the flexibility to go pick up your student when, like at my house too, the bus doesn't run?
Yeah.
How much of it is that? How much do employers, from your standpoint, need to be attuned to the fact that people are looking maybe for something more than wages?
No, you're absolutely right. Wages are a big part of it, and companies have begun stepping up through bonus programs and wage increases pretty consistently. But that isn't the full end solution. Part of it is quality of life, and so we're also seeing companies be very flexible in how they're inviting people back to work. So a good number of that 33,000 is early retirees. The stock market is up, their portfolios are stronger, they think they can sustain an earlier retirement, and as long as that holds, they can. At the same time, those people want to give back, they want to stay engaged, but maybe not full time. So can employers find part-time solutions or work from home solutions that allow them maybe to travel a little bit more, but still contribute back to the company in which they work? So we're seeing employers be more flexible than ever before, and I think that's going to be sort of the new normal going forward.
You're obviously quite familiar with West Michigan, and you know that it wasn't that many years ago when you could drive through downtown Grand Rapids and there were a lot of empty and undeveloped buildings down there. In the mid-2000s, you could drive out along 44th Street and find as many square feet as you wanted of warehouse space or manufacturing space or anything else and get it for a quarter on the dollar or whatever the prices were at that time. You said something in your economic outlook that shocked me, particularly coming out of this pandemic. I had predicted two things, not that I go out making predictions, but I had just suggested that A, the state's going to be in bad shape because revenues are going to be way down. People aren't working, they're not paying their taxes. Well, I was only $7 billion wrong there. And I also projected that because people were working at home and that might be a new norm, there would be this glut of office and other space. Space is a problem right now for us.
It is. You know, on the office side, year over year, we've seen a 1 percentage point increase in vacancy on the office side. Now, a couple things are in play. You know, leases take a while to fade off, and so that might still play itself out. At the same time, we're seeing companies just rethink how they use their office. So it might no longer be a sea of cubicles working everywhere, but instead more of a series of innovation hubs where people come in, they collaborate for a day or two, and they work from home for their email type of work. The other big shift is on the industrial side. We're at 1.7% vacancy for industrial buildings across the region. That's virtually zero on a market that has about 100 million square feet of industrial space. Our manufacturing sector is booming. In the midst of the pandemic, people were buying more things than services or experiences, and so we make a lot of things. Space utilization went up. Warehousing and e-commerce has consumed a lot of space as well, and then finally even the cannabis industry has taken up some of that space. And so, you know, building tends to be a little bit more cyclical, and we're in this moment where we need that cycle to kick in and start building more space to absorb for companies to create more jobs.
They are separate to some degree, but the housing market has drained every available person working in construction, appreciating that companies that are building houses are not necessarily the same companies that would be building warehouse and manufacturing space, but some of the same people could go back between those two industries. And if this industry is already strained, and if you try to get something fixed at your house recently, you know how strained it can be.
Yeah.
I mean, how difficult does that become? Again, we're back to having enough people to do that, even if there were people who had the capital and who had the property and could do that.
Yeah, it's really three factors. It's the quality of the workforce that we have. Are they skilled and trained in the areas that are in high demand? It's the quantity, just the raw numbers, as you said, the warm bodies. Do we have enough people? And then finally, it's the matchmaking. Are we quickly and efficiently connecting people up to those opportunities? That's kind of the dynamic that's in play that was wildly disrupted by the pandemic and hasn't really settled into a normal cadence yet. But employers are waking up every day hustling to make sure they're being accommodating and flexible to invite people back into the workforce. They're upping their training. Within that survey work we did about a year ago, only 1 in 3 companies were offering extensive training. Today, that's well over half. And so companies are really starting to invest in their people. This is part of putting sort of Humpty Dumpty back together as an economy, if you will, and it's not simple, it's not easy. We're working at it hard every day at the right place. And the regions, again, the regions that get this right faster are going to be the regions that come out ahead.
I don't know that there is any broad agreement on how, but there is broad agreement within the Lansing circles, if you will, from the House and the Senate and the governor, that job training is going to be a must as we move through this new expansion of or new phase of the economy. You just referenced we have to kind of upscale folks. Where do we need to be focusing? I know, one of the things the governor and the governor before, Governor Whitmer talked about, Governor Snyder talked about, was really being interested in the skilled trades because we have a big drop off in there and there's a big demand for it. And they both point out that these are not the skilled trades of old, that these are, you make a good wage. You're not working in the same kind of environments you were in 1965 or 55. But what do we need to focus on, or is it everything?
Well, I mean, across the board right now, it is everything. But let's narrow that into 3 basic buckets, Rick. We've in the life of the right place, about 35 years, we've really had a heavy hand in diversifying our manufacturing base, and that is an area of strength for the region. And we need people to be skilled in those skilled trades, as you described, to help support that manufacturing base. The last 15 years or so have been really around the health sciences sector, and as I've been told, 1 in 3 students at Grand Valley State University is now studying some field of related to health sciences, which is pretty remarkable from where we were 20 years ago. That is an area with acute needs, especially coming out of this pandemic where so many of our healthcare workers are fatigued and needing support. We could infuse more people there. The third sort of leg of the stool is on technology, which cuts across every industry we have. The right place, we're making a big push forward to try to build out more of a tech sector here in West Michigan, and so we need to start to build that pipeline for that sector in and of itself, but also the tech needs across every company, whether it be cybersecurity, software development, you name it. There's a high growth, high demand opportunity there as well.
When you talk about the healthcare demands, obviously we have seen that because of COVID, but there's a natural occurrence as the aging baby boomer population moves along, that's going to make that even more important, isn't it?
Absolutely, and you can't automate that very well, right? At the end of the day, you need that nurse across from that bed helping that patient, and so that's really going to consume a lot of labor, and we need more people to be trained in that field.
We've got just a few seconds left. I know it's your job to be optimistic about what's going to go on. You were pretty optimistic in the economic outlook that you had. There are challenges out there. Where do you see us in 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just my job to be optimistic, Rick. I look at the data and the survey work that we do. As I said before, 94% of our companies are favorable towards the West Michigan business climate. 83% had growing sales. 63% want to expand their business next year. We see a lot of good things ahead.
Randy Thelen from The Right Place, thank you so much for being with us. I'll be right back with the final thought. That's our show for this week. Thanks for joining us on this holiday weekend. Starting next week, a new year, and we'll start talking about, guess what, in Lansing, a budget. I hope you'll join us then. To the point.